Hello and welcome to RealStory Group's Wednesday webinar for this week on Have You Outgrown Your Dam? My name is Scott Dill on the business development team here, and my colleague Jarrod Gingras, who's our managing director and lead dam analyst, will be joining us momentarily on the line and taking us through the heart of today's presentation. But I wanted to kick things off with a couple of quick housekeeping items of note. First, if you have any questions during today's presentation at all, please feel free to enter those into the GoToWebinar control panel and the questions tab, and you should have a couple minutes available at the end of today's session where we can take those questions. And then also, everybody that's attending today will get a copy of the slide deck, and I do see a number of subscribers on the line with us, and you'll be able to access a recording of this presentation in your subscriber library within the next couple of days. So thank you all for taking some time out of your day. Certainly do appreciate it. And as I mentioned, we have some subscribers on the line, and always appreciate you joining us for the presentation. And for those that are new to us, I'd like to talk for a moment about those subscription offerings that we have available. So really, there's three different ways in which folks will engage with our research, which is really the crux of our business. The first is a self-service or standard subscription, which in this particular case, you'd subscribe to our research on digital asset management. You'd have access for a full year to all of the evaluations. Right now, we're covering 27 vendors in that particular space, along with tools where you can create a custom shortlist and then compare those vendors side by side. So if you're at the beginning stages of your process, that can be a really helpful tool for you. But if you want to get a little bit more depth with the research and a little bit more of a real world type of experience, you can also subscribe to our assisted model, which comes with 4 hours of advisory time where Jarrod and the rest of our analyst team can actually walk through some deep dive presentations on a number of the vendors. We can validate your shortlist. We can even coach you through a negotiation process with the vendor that you end up choosing, and typically that pays for the subscription on its own, sometimes and even more than that. So certainly that's an option for you. And then our latest offering is our guided approach, which will also supplement the advisory time with templates for RFPs, and we'll help you through some use case scenarios and provide a lot more document review. So certainly if you have questions about the subscription offerings, then please feel free to reach out to us after today's presentation. Also, for those that are new to RealStory Group, we have taken a different approach than traditional analyst firms to the way that we evaluate vendors. We don't rank who's the best and who's the worst. We don't really believe that there's one true best vendor in a particular area, but rather we evaluate based on who's going to be the right fit for what it is you're trying to do. And the approach that we take is that we don't do any work for the vendors that we cover. So you see on the map here that we have on the screen, we cover over 100 different vendors in 8 different marketplaces. Today, we're going to focus on the purple line, which is digital asset management. And again, it's an area where we cover 27 vendors currently. We detail them based on use case and technology fits. And you're welcome to download sample from that research at any particular time. But that's where we're going to look at today and take a look at, have you outgrown your dam, and does your incumbent provider really give you the experience that you need from a digital asset management perspective. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jarrod Gingras, who will take us through the heart of today's presentation. Jarrod?
Great, thanks, Scott. And I'll echo Scott's comments and thank you all for taking a bit of time out of your busy schedules and joining us today. We appreciate it as always. So today we're going to be talking about have you outgrown your digital asset management system? In a perfect world, or I'd say over the years we've had the pleasure of helping quite a few organizations go about selecting their first digital asset management system, and that's always fun and definitely provides a lot of value to folks who are doing things in a very different way, and to see the value of digital asset management in sort of that greenfield environment is really something that we take some pleasure in. However, I would say that more and more in recent days, it's the questions that we're getting asked from people is, can you help us evaluate if our current dam is still right for us? Or can you help us replace our current dam because we know it's not right for us? And we've seen many organizations on their second, third, and fourth try at this, and they want to do something better. And so that's where really the idea for this webinar came about. Is we wanted to talk about some 5 signs that you might be outgrowing your digital asset management system. Some questions you should ask, when you're considering switching or not, and then let's talk about some ways that you can explore some alternatives to truly suss out, if there's a better option out there for you. And as Scott said, finally we'll wrap up with some Q&A as time permits. All right, so let's start out with something that we've been observing at RealStory Group in our research and working with our clients. Digital asset management systems are taking on more important roles in today's enterprises marketing technology stacks. It's rare that DAM systems exist in departmental settings as a sole repository. More and more we're seeing DAMs actually powering people's marketing technology systems of engagement. We'll talk about what I mean by that in a few minutes. But because of this expanded role, we're seeing DAMs being pushed to their limits in many cases, and that's really where we get these phone calls from our subscribers and future subscribers who are asking us, hey, we know that there's an opportunity here, but our current DAM, I don't think can get us to where we want to go. Can you help us make this determination and then tell us what else is out there that can get us there? And like I said, many people are asking this question. Many of you are probably asking this question. That's probably why you decided to join us today. But let's look at some ways that we can ascertain if you're truly outgrowing your DAM. So first sign I'll call it is your DAM has become a dumping ground. Now, I'm sure some of you can relate to this, but we see this time and time again where we have organizations come to us and say, we installed these really well-intentioned digital asset management systems, but over time, they've just become a place where people are dumping every single asset, every single file without a lot of reason behind it. And it's become unmanageable. So even though you have this system in place, people are having trouble finding the assets that they need and really getting that value that they had once thought they'd be getting out of this system. They've really lost that play. And so, I want to caution this sign a little bit. I want to hedge a little bit here, because just because your dam has become a dumping ground doesn't mean you have the wrong dam. It could be indicative of some other things that have gone wrong. Something like you do not have the right governance process in place to determine which assets should actually go in the dam and which assets shouldn't go in the dam. You might not have the proper systems in place to give people the right access rights to what they can see within the dam and what they can't see in the dam. Sometimes less is more in that case. You might not have the right metadata controls, so that's contributing to your findability challenges as well. And so, while it's certainly not a one-to-one correlation, that if your dam has become a dumping ground, it's necessarily that you have the wrong problem. But I will challenge you to think about that, because in many cases, what we found is for organizations that have the wrong dam for the use cases that they're trying to solve, people have to resort to workarounds within the dam, and so this is where things start to go off track, and people are just putting assets where they're not supposed to, just so that they can find things, and to others that doesn't make sense. So it feels like a dumping ground, and these internal workarounds can make things very messy, both in reality and in perceived reality. So sign number 2 is related to sign number 1, and this is what happens when we see it being easier to, instead of doing workarounds within the systems, people are starting to go outside of the systems and subvert the system. And so people start to store assets in other places because it's easier than working with your DAM. You know, their assets on your desktops, on your laptops and tablets and phones. You know, your email and instant messaging tools, your collaboration tools become your de facto DAMs, if you will. I'm sure many of you have file management solutions, in your Office 365 environments. Maybe it's in SharePoint, maybe it's other document management systems. Those become your de facto DAMs. Every organization has a D or an E or an F or a Z drive, right? And I think for many organizations, those become your DAMs, or applications themselves become digital asset management systems. And maybe the most common offender, if you will, is the proliferance of cloud tools that make it really easy for people to share assets both internally and externally. Make it really easy for you to just plop some files or assets into a Dropbox or a Box or any 100 other different cloud file sharing tools, because it's easy and it's accessible, and you can access it from home as well as your office. And people have just said, well, that's easier than going through the rigmarole that we have with regard to formal processes as it relates to the DAM. And so people are finding themselves going around the DAM as opposed to using the DAM for what it was intended for. Sign number 3 is one that I alluded to earlier, but this is sort of common, where your DAM has become just another silo in your organization. And this is true with digital assets, but it's also true with other types of content in organizations. This is something we see quite commonly when we're working with our subscribers and other clients. You know, documents end up residing within document management tools. Your web and app related content all resides in your web content management tool. Your marketing content all resides within your marketing automation or your email tools, or even your social tools, social publishing tools. And so what you've done is bring on these new technologies that just became silos. And so with regards to digital asset management, in some organizations, we're seeing these systems just become a standalone repository with no connectivity to other systems. And what's happened, these have just become bloated silos over time. And what our clients are asking us more and more is, we don't want just another silo. We want to be able to make sure that we have consistent brand experiences across all of our systems of engagement. People say, how can we have that single source of truth across these different systems of engagement? And one of the recommendations that we've had over the last few years is that your DAM, in many cases, is the right system to power these other systems of engagement. So you want to be thinking about connectivity. And as many organizations are on this sort of journey with regards to their DAM maturity, they've recognized this need as well, and says, we can't be housing our assets in this silo that's cut off from the rest of our MarTech stack, or our ecosystem, our technology ecosystem. So I think I bring this up here because this has been kind of this real decision point, or this point in time where people are saying, all right, let's try to make our DAM the engine of our marketing stack. Let's try to connect it to one or multiple other systems of engagement. Let's try to make our DAM system talk to our web content management tool, have it talk to our CRM tools, where our salespeople can pull from the same repository of assets that we're publishing to our social channels and putting out in our emails. And it becomes this decision point, because people, when it comes time to do this integration, their legacy DAM systems are holding them back, and that in many cases they don't have the modern APIs and connectivity that they can actually do these connections. And so for a lot of organizations, unfortunately, they're still stuck with this notion of, well, we have a dam, we're going to pull assets out of the dam and then put them back into some of these other systems. And that just creates some redundancy and more bloat across all of these systems. And I think that's just a telltale sign that you might have the wrong tool for the job. So sign number 4 is sort of related, but we're seeing companies, again, being held back by some of their incumbent technology, and DAM in particular, when it comes to powering their new business requirements and their business goals and their business initiatives for the short, medium, and long term. And this is an example that we like to bring up all the time, where we talk about this using your DAM as an integrated marketing content hub. I think this is an ambition held by many, but what I mean by that is you position a DAM system to not only provide your audio and video and image files to your systems of engagement and ultimately every single channel that you speak to your customers and constituents in, but what if you were able to create a tool that managed more than just those image and video assets? What if you could have a single source of truth as it related to content and images, and potentially tying together some data so that you're able to achieve that true goal of either a multi-channel experience or in a perfect world, an omni-channel experience. So can you have a system that manages not only just your images and video assets, but things like white papers and PDFs and things like your email snippets or website snippets or calls to action that get reused in many places? What if you had a single source of truth for all of these things that you could then proliferate to your other systems of engagement, so that you could get value out of reusing these things and creating that consistent brand experience at every step of the way, at every single touch point. Now, this is the vision that we see organizations on just lots of our clients' roadmaps. This is where they're going. Maybe the first step is a multi-channel model, but everyone's goal is to provide that omni-channel consistent experience, regardless of the touch point. We want to have that. We want to be on brand, on message at every step of the way. So what's happening is, again, because the DAM is for many organizations that single source of truth for at least the images and videos, in many cases that system's holding them back, because not all DAM systems were built with this notion of being that centralized hub of content beyond images and video. And so this is a huge area which is causing people to say, hey, maybe I need to reinvestigate the technology that we have here, and maybe there's another a better option out there that we can do something different and do something better. Just an example of why that might be is, many of these DAM systems in the marketplace were built as simple libraries. And while they were better than your F drive and your Z drive, they don't have many of the DAM systems in the marketplace don't have the complexity built into their systems to be able to handle true compound assets and manage the sophisticated metadata relationships between assets, whether it's parent-child relationships or sibling relationships, or ontological relationships that really allow you to do some powerful things in how you store and manage your content. And that's just one example, but the good news here is that some of the products in the marketplace were built with this in mind. And so it's all about figuring out what you need, but this is just a classic example of when people take the leap to start to position their DAM in a way that's not in that silo, but truly powering their marketing stack. It's a time where people start to say, maybe we need to go a different direction. And number 5 is you need to be aware of some telltale symptoms that the vendor itself, or it might be failing, or the technology that that vendor has produced might be failing. We have this little checklist, if you will, that we like to use to help our clients, assess, are you in a failing relationship? And we like to say for you to go through this and be honest with yourself and figure out which of these apply to you. If it's only one or two, I think you should pay attention to those things, but it's not time to panic yet. Keep a close eye on them and manage them and monitor those things, but you don't need to panic yet. 3 to 5 of these, if you start to check that many, I think you may want to have a plan B in place, because it's not heading in the right direction. And then 6 to 10, you want to pack your bags and get moving. And unfortunately, we're seeing not every technology vendor really keeping up the necessary roadmaps with their products. I will say that there's a lot of energy in the DAM space, so this is not a rampant problem, but we've seen some DAM products disappear over the years because of just this case, that they got distracted as vendors, or decided that their products didn't stand out enough, and they lost some market share because of it, and have kind of left their products to go fallow. And you need to be aware of that. So should you switch? How do you know if you should switch? Well, what I don't want you to do is just go out to the marketplace and say, let's read up on what other analysts are saying about the DAM marketplace and figure out who are the best vendors out there. If there's one common mantra that we've been using the last 20 years here at RealStory Group, is that there's no best vendor out there. You'll never hear us say there's a best vendor out there, but there's a best vendor for you. And that's what I want you to try to hone in on. You should always be aware of your own future desires, your own roadmaps, and think about, do you want to achieve, are you on this journey to achieving this omni-channel experience for your clients and customers, or do you need to manage assets for simpler use cases? Just because I said that many are on this journey doesn't mean that everyone's on this journey. There are always exceptions to that rule, and the good news here is that there's a wide range of products in the marketplace that span from really complicated, complex solutions that can be molded and configured into doing many different things, to some simpler, really good point solutions that are really good at certain use cases. And if you align with those, you might be better off going with those. And so you got to be honest with yourself in realizing what's realistic and practical for you in the short, medium, long term, and then align that with the solution that's a good fit for what it is you're trying to do. So the way I want you to do that, instead of looking at those single snapshot views of the marketplace, I want you to say, what are you trying to do as an organization? What scenarios are you trying to achieve? And so here's some example scenarios that we like to talk about and we use when assessing the market, the digital asset management marketplace. We break it up into 5 different buckets, if you will: brand management, marketing asset management, enterprise asset management, publishing scenarios, and then video and audio management, as relates to time-based assets. And within each of these buckets, we have some unique scenarios. And what we found is that buyers of digital asset management technology can usually self-identify with a handful of these. It's probably somewhere between 2 and 5 is most common. Now, they're not all weighted equally in those cases, and you have to be honest with yourself which ones are more important than others. But once you do that, that's the first step into identifying who should be on your short list of vendors to evaluate. Because once you identify which scenarios are most important to you, then you can map that to which vendors were fundamentally built to solve those unique scenarios. Okay, because there's a lot of vendors out there who say they can do all these things, and I'm here to tell you, having followed this space for going on a decade now, that's just not true. there's no vendor that can execute really well in all of these scenarios. But the vendors out there were built for certain ones of these scenarios. And if you can find the vendors that were fundamentally built for your scenarios, you're going to be a lot better off. And so when it comes to assessing, your current technology, I want you to take that same approach as if you were starting in a green field and just looking to build your first shortlist. So in this case, we work with our clients all the time to say, all right, let's stack up your incumbent vendor versus the market alternatives, and let's see how they stack up from a ratings perspective with regards to each of these scenarios that are most important to you. So here's a screenshot here that I'm just pulling out about 6 different use case scenarios on the left, and when you use our real-time vendor comparison tool as part of your subscription, you can pick one vendor to compare it to, or any number of vendors to compare it to, and just head to head, you can see side by side how your incumbent stacks up. And then if you want more information, there's a lot more detail behind those ratings where we explain, why we've given each of these vendors a 1, 2, or 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 rating in each of these use cases. In addition, I point your attention to the right side of the screen. It's not just the scenarios that you should be paying attention to when it comes to evaluating your incumbent and market alternatives. You always want to think about what we call vendor intangibles. So things related to the vendor themselves, like their customer support, their strategy, their professional services, their viability and stability. We're monitoring that all the time for you, so you don't have to. We also monitor a vendor's product roadmap, the modernity of their technical infrastructure, and the value for money, as well as looking at the ecosystem that surrounds a particular vendor, like their professional services in their channel, whether they have a strong community around that product, whether or not there's a viable or vibrant ecosystem of add-ons. These are all things that can really provide some insight into the health of a vendor partner, and it's something that we're constantly monitoring, and you should too. And so any of you veterans of RealStory Group, that we have multiple tools as part of your subscription. I just showed you some screenshots from the real-time vendor comparison tool. We also have the Real Quadrant shortlist generator, which allows you to create the right shortlist for you based on, weighting some scenarios as to how important they are to you. It's not a single snapshot view of the marketplace. Rather, it's a custom quadrant for you. So in this case, when you're looking at the upper right hand of that quadrant, it's relevant to you. And we advise our clients to do this exercise on an ongoing basis. Don't just take what the marketplace looks like in 2019 or H1 of 2019 as gospel, because these things are moving and changing all the time. We're constantly updating our evaluations and our ratings as we see these systems out in the wild, and we hear from other IT teams and other implementers and other end users as to what's working well in which situations and what isn't working so well in which situations. And we keep putting that back into the research so that you have an up-to-date view of how these things stack up for these use case scenarios. So I think it's healthy to keep checking the marketplace, keep running these custom quadrants, so that even though you've made a selection into a particular tool, see how it continues to stack up in relation to its competitors, because that'll tell you a lot as well. So here's some takeaways here. Three key ones. In 2019, we see the divide in complexity within that damn marketplace. It continues to grow. There's a gap in the marketplace, and that gap is really widening. There's the real complex tools and some simple tools, and the guys in the middle are trying to decide what they want to be, and that's okay. As a buyer, that's not necessarily bad news, because you have options, but you need to understand the trajectory of these tools and which direction they're heading, because it's going to have a major impact into what you can and cannot do going forward long term. There are certainly good reasons to switch in 2019. We're seeing several vendors and platforms start to plateau, and if you read the research, you'll know which ones I'm talking about, because we don't really pull any punches there. We'll tell you like it is. We've seen some of these damn vendors struggle. Being let's say 10 years into their life cycle for many of these vendors, or in some cases 15 or 20 years into their life cycle. Some of these technical architectures are getting a little creaky or cranky, and that's causing many to question their long-term viability. I think be really aware of how well your DAM system fits into your larger stack. This one you're going to hear us talk about over and over again, because this is where DAM is headed. DAM has a role at the table here, and a major role at the table when it comes to your omni-channel marketing stack. And having the wrong DAM will lead you astray. And one of the big things that will cause you to question this is, do you need to manage more than just assets? Do you need to manage more content types within a content platform rather than traditional digital asset management? And I think you'll find that not every DAM system can meet those needs. And if that's the direction you're headed, you want to correct course rather quickly. And finally, be smart with evaluating your plausible alternatives. Stay abreast of the marketplace. There's new entrants all the time. There's vendors leaving the marketplace all the time. There's vendors who are changing their strategies and pivoting as we go along. So make sure that they still align with your needs as time goes on. But I can't stress enough, use the scenarios to your benefit. Use the scenarios to say, are we still aligned with the vendors of our choosing? With that, I know we're running a little bit over on time, and I apologize for that, but I thank you all for sticking with me. As always, I talked about the research quite a bit today. If anyone wants to try those tools that we talked about, feel free, go online. It's free to try. If you want to read a whole chapter from our research, download a sample. You get the whole hard-hitting analysis. You'll see how we write and how we don't pull any punches there. Or if anyone wants a demo of what it means to be a RealStory Group subscriber, just reach out, and my colleague Scott will be happy to run you through a demo of our system. So with that, we'll wrap up and say thank you so much again for joining me today. Feel free to reach out with any questions. We didn't have a ton of questions today that I see so far, but given the time, feel free to just email me, and I'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.